Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. My name is Cynthia Alvarez, and this is the Grand Boulevard Coalition show. And so today we're going to get right into the topic for today, as well as share some flyers. But the topic is going to be something that is impacting our immigrant communities today. So, immigrant populations and the current issues that they're facing. So, we're going to talk a lot about any laws, executive orders that are impacting these communities, as well as any statistics and just things that we can do to be of support to these communities. And so before we get into that, I want to share a QR code that's going to link you to some information that you can take a picture of with your phone. And I'll also repeat this in Spanish just to make sure you all know to take a picture of it, share this with people. I'm gonna leave this on there for a little bit, so make sure you take a picture. It can link you to our Padlet, which just has a bunch of information that I'm gonna be sharing today, but also other things that I won't have time to share today, as well as our social medias and things like that. And then the next image will share some information on Know Your Rights. These are gonna be little cards or just something that you can save to your phone as well. If you do come into contact with ICE, immigration officials, or things like that. So, ahorita van a tener una oportunidad a tomar una foto de lo que voy a poner en la pantalla. Va a tener información de donde puede encontrar recursos para ustedes, para personas que necesitan tomar foto. Y aquí lo van a tener en inglés y en español. Para tener en sus teléfonos por si lo van a necesitar. Aquí está uno en español para tomar foto y vamos a hablar más al rato de estas cartas y cómo les puede ayudar. So yeah, make sure you take a picture and share it, spread it around. And you can also find these online as well on our Padlet. Make sure you take those pictures and just save it. You can even look up the Illinois, the organization that's up on the screen. So yeah, that will also be on our Padlet, like I said, along with a bunch of other information that we won't have time to fully get into today just because there's a lot. But yeah, just to make sure people are able to stay informed, share the knowledge. That's what we're here to do. But yeah, so this is a really important topic, something that's been happening as you've seen on the news, ICE raids and deportations that have led to fear in the communities. I won't go over, how all the states are kind of dealing with this, but more specific to Chicago, such as our Little Village neighborhood. There's been articles, going out from the news of how the day after ICE raids have been issued and the executive orders have been issued, Little Village has been empty. The streets have been empty, including, street vendors, shop owners, people who live in the community who are too afraid to go outside because of everything that's going on right now. So we'll go a little bit into what those executive orders are, along with some other laws that have just been recently passed, especially the Lake and Riley Act, which was just passed into law yesterday. So yeah. Something important to think about. Immigrant communities have been fearful coming into contact with ICE. It can be whether they're at work, whether they're just outside, out and about, and now schools and churches can be targeted for raids as well, which is something that used to be safe havens at one point, and now they are not. So these are places that are also open to ICE raids, and it's important to be aware of those things just to stay informed. So getting into some of the harmful laws and executive orders, the one more having to do with ICE raids. This is something that you can also look up on the whitehouse.org website. So you can learn a lot more about it because it goes a lot in depth of the impacts, what it does, why they did it, things like that. So the executive order is called Guaranteeing the State's Protections Against Invasion. So that's an executive order that was signed, which enforces increased deployment of ICE officials, leading to more raids, like I said, in workplaces, outside, schools, and churches. And so with this, the Trump administration has demanded at least 1,800 deportations across the country daily. That is like his goal number that he wants to enforce ICE officials to try to aim for. Other reports say about 1,500 or 1,300 daily. And so that's something that is a little bit concerning, because if you're speeding up the process of trying to hit a quota, it can lead to a lot of people who might be detained who are U.S. citizens, which is something that has already happened. In one case, a U.S. veteran who was detained by ICE, who is an American citizen that happened to be detained, as well as people who have no criminal records, right? And so this can also lead to profiling. So people who might fit a description, so to speak, might be profiled, might be pulled over, and can get detained just because they seem to look like somebody they were looking for. And so because this process is being rushed, it can lead to things like that. And so we've already seen the consequences of this, and it's only going to lead to many more in the future, especially since it's just been about 10 days since the inauguration of the president. So with that, we don't know how long it's going to go on for. And with the increase in ICE raids, it's just important to be aware, know your rights, which is something that I'm going to talk about later on as well, knowing your rights, conozca sus derechos, and I'm going to be sharing some resources on that as well. And that was a little bit about the executive order, which like I said, you can find on whitehouse.org. And then speaking a little bit more about the Laken-Riley Act, this was just passed into law yesterday. And what this act is, it was created in response to a young woman who was killed by a Venezuelan man who was undocumented. And so in response to that crime that has happened, they created a law which specifically targets immigrant communities, and the law mandates that the federal detention of illegal immigrants who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury. And so that's kind of the law that they've implemented starting yesterday. And the important thing to think about and look at, and you can also, like I said, search up this law so that you can learn more about it. The thing with this is the word accused. So thinking very specifically about that word and what that means, accused means that they have not been convicted of this crime. So if they've been accused, if they fit the description, quote unquote, of somebody who may have done this crime, they get arrested, they get detained, and they can deport these people back to wherever they migrated from. And so this can cause problems because they might end up detaining the person who was not involved in this crime, or someone involved in something such as a petty theft crime. If we think a lot about, just thinking a lot deeper about, immigrant communities, especially Venezuelan communities who have fled from their country for safety reasons, for their family, for things like that, it's important because these are people who want a better life for themselves, for their families, and they might end up in situations where they don't have food to eat, they don't have a place to stay. So maybe something such as like a trespassing, or like it says specifically here, theft, such as stealing something it could be something small like some food from a gas station. It's, something that they feel the need to do if they want to, feed their children, things like that. This is not anything that I'm condoning, but just explaining the situation and just thinking a little bit deeper about why people might do the things that they do. And so, yeah, this is something that is potentially harmful to people of these communities because of, like I said, profilings, fitting the description, someone who's getting unlawfully, unjustly arrested or detained for these things that they didn't actually even do. And And it further normalizes and demonizes these communities too, because then a lot of people feel the need to group people in a certain way because they said, oh, this Venezuelan man murdered this woman in this country, so therefore immigrants are murderers. And so it's, that's the narrative that kind of gets pushed out. And with these laws, that kind of enforces their beliefs about these populations, and that these populations are dangerous people, they're criminals. Things that the president has said, that also cause further stereotyping of these communities, like saying that they're sending their worst from other countries, sending their worst immigrants, or the immigrants are coming from prisons or mental institutions. These are all things that can cause stigma, stereotyping, and just have negative connotations towards these groups, and for their demonizing them. So this can also lead to other laws, which are already laws that are being in the works, depending on the local state level or on the federal level, laws that are further impacting these communities, bounty hunter laws, other laws that I'm not going to really go into for today, but you can look up, like I said. Luckily for us, we are in a blue state, and more specifically in a sanctuary city. So we do have some protections for undocumented immigrants, and that also kind of includes a little bit, such as the Chicago police won't be working with ICE to arrest or detain these undocumented immigrants. But yeah, that is just one of the things that comes with being a sanctuary city. And it's just important to, like I said, know more about it, learn more about Laken Riley and what that means, the Laken Riley Act. And yeah, so just thinking about that, there was another executive order, I believe, that Trump had included ending the CBP1 app. And so this is an app that was used by migrants coming from Mexico who wanted to seek asylum in the U.S. and were trying to make appointments. This included appointments with Customs and Border Protection. So before even stepping foot in the country, they want to make sure that they make an appointment to check their eligibility for asylum seeking, and if they fit that eligibility, what they can do to make sure that they come into the U.S. with that asylum status. And so this is an app that Trump had ended, which had shut down the app. It shut down all the appointments, and people who, throughout the border of Mexico, between Mexico and the U.S., there were people who were waiting in line at the border who were waiting for their appointments that never got them because the app was shut down. And so this also kind of goes along with some other, harmful stereotyping or further demonizing these communities by telling migrants that they need to come in the right way, come in the legal way, and make your appointments, make sure that you do everything right first before you come in. And this was a group of people that were trying to come in the right way and trying to make sure that they have the eligibility requirements made to come into this country. Whether that be, like I said, for reasons that include safety reasons. I have also personally worked with a family, and there are so many families like this that leave their country because they are fleeing gang violence in their city, wherever in their town where they live. They've been threatened. They don't feel safe anymore, and they have children, so they want to save their families. They want to save them from the violence and everything that's going on in those countries, and they've been scared to go back, right? So if you send people back to those countries where they just escaped from for safety, then it further, causes more problems in terms of them not knowing where they're gonna go, right? So thinking about things like that. And yeah, so make sure you also look into, there's a lot of information that I suggest you all look into. So the CBP1 Act, or CBP1 app, is an app that you can look up and just learn more about what it did for migrants and how it affects them now that it's been shut down. So these things are harmful because, they're predatory. These laws are discriminatory to the Latina and immigrant communities because, like I said, it demonizes them and just further normalizes the discrimination against these communities. And it's really important just to think more about statistics that we're also going to get into, just to kind of debunk a little bit of some of the things people might say about immigrants and that they bring crime. So thinking more about that, some of the laws that led people to believe, some of these laws led people to believe that immigrants are a large cause of crimes in the U.S., but the data actually shows the opposite is true. So according to a report from the American Immigration Council, compared to the U.S. population, undocumented immigrants are 26% less likely to be convicted of homicide and about 50% less likely to be arrested for violent crimes. So more so thinking about violent crimes and homicide crimes. So thinking, how the president or other people might say things that imply that immigrants cause more crimes than U.S. citizens. They murder about 4,000 people a year. That is something that's not true. That's not a real statistic. And there's a lot of fact checking out there, which is really important to look at. So immigrants are not responsible, undocumented immigrants are not responsible for 4,000 deaths to U.S. citizens. And the statistics show that actually so between 2017 and 2024, research found that proportions of immigrants in an area have no effect on violent property crimes. So checking over the years, how people have migrated to specific areas, specific communities. They checked the before and the during of crime rates and seeing kind of comparing, right, the relationship between crime and immigrants. So during that time and the before and after, they noticed that there is actually no increase in these crimes, in property crimes or violent crimes, and that an increase in immigrants in some areas were actually associated with lower violence and lower property crimes. So it's really important to think about that, right? And so why might that be, right? Thinking more about undocumented immigrants and the circumstances that they came from, they want to be here. They want to have a new life here. They want to raise a family here. And they have a lot more to lose if they are out committing crimes, right? If they get caught committing this crime, they can get detained and they can get deported. So they have more of a reason to be law-abiding people who will be less likely to commit crimes because of these situations, right? They want to be here for their families, support their families, and lead good lives. So yeah, that's part of the reason why there is less crime or no increase in crimes because of immigration in these areas. So thinking a little bit about that, it's important for us to be able to support our communities, whether you're a part of the Latina or immigrant community or not. It's important for everybody to know these know your rights information, as well as ways to spread that information, ways to be supportive of these communities. So yeah, just important to know. Like I said, if you had a chance to take a picture of that QR code from earlier, it can lead you to some resources, like I said. So thank you so much. Yeah, it's going to be right there on the screen. You can take that picture and it should lead you to our Padlet, like I said. And I do have one here on me, but obviously you're not going to be able to see. So that is going to be there for you to print out, to share online. You can download it to your phone if you're not able to print it out. But yeah, so we'll go into that too. And so seeing some ways to support immigrant communities, something that I've seen that I wanted to add on here. Basically, if you see ICE detaining someone, record it with your phone. If you're out and about and you see someone getting detained by ICE, record it, but make sure you're not in the way where you can interfere with the police, because you can also get arrested for obstructing and interfering. So make sure you're recording from a safe distance, and if you're able to, ask the person what their name and phone number is, so that way you can contact their family and let them know what happened. If you're not able to ask them, you can just share that video on social media, post the date and location of where this occurred, so that way it can go around and people can share that information, and hopefully it gets back to their family. Let's see, sharing information on knowing your rights, some basic things. I won't go through everything, but you do not have to open the door. If they come to your door, you do not have to open the door without a proper search warrant or arrest warrant. These are things that give them permission to access your home and enter your home. So if they do have that, you have to let them in if it is signed by a judge. And if they have an ICE warrant, which is different from a search and arrest warrant, make sure you look these up too. An ICE warrant does not give them permission to enter your home, even if it has the name of the person that they are looking for and they do live there. They do not have access to your home without that search or arrest warrant. And you make sure to tell them that you do not give consent for them to enter or search your home. So then ask them if they do have a warrant and they say they have one. Make sure you ask them to slide it under the door, or show it to you if you have a window through your door, to show it to the window. Take a picture of it. Make sure that it has the proper signature by a judge, and then you go from there. So then if you are outside or driving and they pull you over or they stop you, make sure you pull over. If they ask you for your license and registration, you are required to give it to them if you are driving, because you need a license if you're driving. So if they do ask you for that, hand that to them. But then if they start asking you questions regarding your citizenship status, asking, if you were born here, where you're from, you can say, I do not have to answer that. I do not have to answer any of your questions. And if they are arresting you, you say you have the right to remain silent, and that you have a right to a lawyer. And if you are arrested and they do take you in, you do not have to say anything to them, and you can wait until you contact a lawyer to help you. And you do have a right to a lawyer, a public defender, a public attorney. So that is something that is your right and that you are able to do if that does happen to you. So make sure you have an emergency plan. This is something that is also included in our Padlet, just in case if you have little ones that depend on you and you do happen to be separated from them. Make sure that you have a plan for that child. If they're able to stay here, then they can be cared for by another relative, a friend, someone that you trust, while you try to get this process sorted out. So make sure you learn more about that. Also, just join workshops online. Look up immigrant resources, immigrant organizations that work with immigrants, that share information like Know Your Rights. They'll do like full in-depth seminars on what you can do, what you need to know. Printing out information and handing it out to people in your school, people at your job, is really important, just to spread that knowledge around. And printing out things called red cards or tarjetas rojas. You can print that out and look that up too. This is something that you can give to an ICE official that says you wish to remain silent, you will not answer any questions regarding your legal status, and that you have a right to a lawyer. These are really important things to know. And just make sure you keep your eye out on things going on out in your community, in the news. Stay alert on laws being passed at the local and federal levels. And just use your voice as much as you can. Protest if you're able to and you're safely able to. Get your voice heard. Do whatever you can, but always be safe. And so thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to listen today. I hope you learned something from this, and please follow us on our socials. We will be sharing a lot of information on there. So I hope you all have a good rest of your day and take some time for mental health care, and stay safe. Thank you.